Okay, we have resolved the technical issues, so I will call today's meeting, September 3rd, to order. Rise as you're able, and we will sing the national anthem, please.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. As we gather, we recognize and acknowledge the traditional keepers of this land with whom we share today. The Township of Southgate is a part of the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Six Nations of the Grand River, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Haudenosaunee, and Saugeen Métis. The land that surrounds us is part of who we are as it reflects our histories. May we live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Madam Clerk, is anyone registered for open forum this morning?
Yes, we have two. Kathy White is first.
Okay. Kathy, welcome. Come on up to the microphone. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Oh, cheapers, thanks. Good morning, everyone. So I've been kennel. I live right across here. I can actually watch all this construction. It's lovely. It's been quite interesting the way they're doing it. Anyways, I've been a kennel, dog kennel for a registered one for 27 years now, 28 years actually this year. And the vet comes all the time. He comes to the house. He gives all my dogs their needles. Everybody has their shots. And he inspects my kennel and everything else, knowing right well that everything is in line. And if there wasn't something in line, I would certainly fix it. So I'm just hoping that we can just continue on like this, and there's no other inspection really required. I just, I would just like it to stay the way it is. I also have a concern about wandering dogs in the village, which they wander everywhere. Mine, I try and stay at home, but when I called about a wandering dog that was down at the neighbor's place and wandering all over the place, I didn't know the dog. If I know the dog, I'll gladly call the owners, but I didn't know the dog. And so I called the township and got a hold of the canine department. And they said, nope, you have to contain that dog before I can even attempt to come out. And it'll be well over an hour. I can't go down. And first of all, I don't walk well. I can't go down and contain a dog that I don't know doesn't have his shots, may have rabies, may have everything else. I'm being concerned about a dog that is wandering around. I don't want it near my place. And why am I trying to grab a dog to bring it up and try and put it somewhere where it could have a disease? You talked about parvo. I don't know anything about, my dogs are all treated for parvo and everything, but I don't need some strange dog bringing some disease onto my property if we can help it. It was very concerning, and they were of no help at all. So I thought you guys should be aware of what went on. Okay. Anyways, I think that's it. I'm short words, but yes, ask me any questions if you have any. Okay.
Thanks, Kathy.
The next person is Karen Foster.
Karen, come on up. Welcome.
morning.
So I'm just wondering why I've never been notified about any of these meetings for the kennels. I have to get notified by the other kennel owners. I've never got a bill. I paid last year. Nothing. But that also goes with my bin bill, which they were looking into. That was spring, silence. Tax bill 2023, pretty well silence. So I really don't know what's going on. And I just like some answers.
Well, the forum this morning is not for a back and forth debate. It's just, we want to hear your concerns and we will have staff.
Well, I'm fine with the kennel or the vet inspection. We've always got the vet inspection for the last probably 10 years. So I'm fine with that.
Okay. Staff will be in touch.
Okay, hopefully.
Thanks, Karen. Anyone else, Lindsay?
That's all I have registered, but I did note a few that come in after that time, so I don't know if there's George.
George, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi. By the way, thank you very much for putting all this together. I really appreciate it. Notice there's a lot of work that's been put in, and I acknowledge it, and I thank you. I was asked by a fellow breeder here to give support. So I have my own concerns, which are different from the individual, and I understand where the other individual has concerns regarding home kennels. So if somebody wants to run a boarding kennel from their home, great. I see a need for it. I also have concerns that, are these dogs being properly, is there a structure in place? And I feel maybe after reading some of that, I'm just wondering if that has been put into place. And I'm referring to if somebody wants to run a boarding home from their home, which they've opened it up to a can of worms in the sense that now you need to have your home inspected. And somebody will say, well, that's intrusion of privacy. But if you're running a business from your home, it has to be in a safe environment. And I'm referring to, if all hell breaks loose one day with a dog that's being boarded, is that house equipped to have a number of crates that is properly suited for the size of the dog? Does they have the kennel behind in their property, especially if they don't have a building? Do they have a setup for it? And I just feel that if somebody wants to do that, great, but they physically need to have things in place in case of emergency. A vet inspection is not going to help that at all. And I think I got lost in it, and that's about a proper safe environment, and I think that needs to be looked at. And I just feel that's a unique case. I'm not asking to restructure the whole thing, but if somebody wants to, is a chart made to say, if you're going to run, you need X number of crates for the number of dogs you say you want to house. Is everything in place? Are these dogs being supervised 24 hours? If they're being kept in crates, I'm not one for crate training. I mean, I do crate train my dogs, but I don't want my dogs to live in crates all day long, because I know a lot of people do that. I'm totally dead against. Okay. And by the way, that was it for that one. Just to let you know, as a breeder, I've got the #1 puppy right now in Canada, done really well, back-to-back best puppy in shows for a new pup. So that's just my little credit from this summer's event in Owen Sound. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George, and congratulations on your success. Anyone else? Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Information of the agenda as presented. Someone care to move that? Jason, seconded by, Joan. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Milne, if I can request that we amend the agenda to move, staff report BES 2025-013 K9 bylaw amendments up. Either before the presentations or after, just so these folks that joined today aren't sitting in,
Sure.
we have a closed meeting
Sure.
after the presentation.
Yep, we could, is council amenable to that? Yeah. Okay, so we need to amend or can we just approve
As
the agenda
amended.
as amended?
Yeah.
As proposed to be amended?
Yeah.
So Jason moved, Joan second. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest related to any item on today's agenda? Not seeing any. If one should arise during the course of the meeting, you can of course declare it at that time. You want that report now, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, you may as well.
What number is that? Sorry. Oh, here we are,
10.3.
10.31. Yep, 3.1. Okay, so the canine bylaw amendments is there. So the motion is to receive the draft amendments as proposed. We're not finalizing the bylaw today. It's simply to discuss and propose the amendments. Someone care to move that, please? Joan and Jim will second. Discussion from council. Perhaps Hannah, do you have anything you'd like to add about the amendments? Or Ken, or who would like to discuss the report? Welcome, Hannah.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, so this report, the report number BES 2025-013, is the report for the canine control bylaw amendments and the fees and charges bylaw. So this report was done after the township staff conducted a meeting with the kennel owners in the township. We took the concerns and comments that they brought forward at that meeting, and also any comments that were brought forward outside of the meeting for those who couldn't attend. These comments and considerations were considered when this report was put forward to council. It is noted that the township has had significant challenges with the canine control bylaw over the years. So this report, we did attempt to apply the bylaw equitably and fairly across the board for all of the kennels in the township. Other than that, I don't have any further comments.
Yeah, do you have anything to add?
Good morning, your worship, members of council. I'll just add that in terms of the proposed changes in the amendments that were discussed with the kennel owners, it's the removal of the second inspection by the township. So it would create a one inspection process that would be done by a professional veterinarian. It is removing the cost recovery of the second inspection, since obviously we wouldn't be doing it anyway. There were a couple of minor typographical updates that we included. So there was reference to an old fee bylaw. There was also changes to regulations regarding livestock guardian dogs, which is a phrase I challenge you to say very quickly at this time of the morning. And then of course a new issue has come up related to canine sales and adoption, which council didn't give us direction on, but we've included in the report because we think it's really important to address. And then of course, I mentioned the fees and charges, James, which is for your consideration.
Very good. Thank you, Ken. And I do commend staff for the amount of time that they've spent on this. It's been a long process. It's not over yet either. Any other discussion, questions? Monica?
Oh, good morning, everybody. Just through you, Chair. I'm not sure exactly who this would go to, but just with regards to potentially dangerous dogs versus dangerous, do we have a clear definition of what that exactly means?
Who wants to run it that way? Ken?
Through your worship, just going through the bylaw. I don't see a specific definition under dangerous, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something later on. But the bylaw does speak to dogs being at large or roaming and not being kept on a property or kept secure. So that's how you deal with those things. Where a dog ends up roaming, then the bylaw speaks to what happens when a dog is found to be roaming or at large and not kept on the property that it should.
Just a follow-up.
Sure,
here.
go ahead.
So just for rationale, like for why I brought that up is just in regards to public safety and fairness and how the labeling and how things are handled. And for obviously protection for those who are owners of dogs and then for the town as well, just to make sure everyone has a clear picture. I'm not sure if that would be a point to possibly look into, maybe having a little bit more definition. Wondering if that's something that would be of interest.
Ken?
Through your worship, the bylaw provides direction when you have a dog that is not properly contained on a property. And then part of that process is that the canine enforcement officer would have to investigate the circumstances. And it's through that the officer can look at the issue of whether the dog is acting in an aggressive manner, because there's other provisions within the bylaw that speak to the issuance of a muzzle order, so that the dog, if aggressive, we can then issue an order to say the dog must be muzzled at, under these circumstances or all the time when outside of a dwelling. So I think for now, we have everything that we need, given that Mr. Dre helped us craft this, and he's considered one of the best guide or legal minds related to this. But I mean, I take your point. We'll have a look. Certainly, continuous improvement is always top of mind. So
Thank you.
Bill, you have something to add?
In the bylaw, there is a definition for menace, which means a threat or hazard that may cause injury or harm. Which it speaks to that.
It's probably safe to assume that any dog, unknown dog, could potentially be dangerous. Hannah?
Through you, Chair, just one further thing to add. The Dog Owners Liability Act would also come into play with aggressive and dangerous dogs, which is the provincial statute and isn't in the bylaw itself for the township. So that would be decided by the canine control officer if DOLA would be more applicable in the circumstance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, Star, for this great report. And I know it's very difficult to keep in touch with all the dog owners and also difficult to have them unleash, especially in the new subdivision. Like everywhere you go and every time you pass, there's dogs coming at you or a dog off leash. What I find difficult though is when we call it after hours to report these dogs, or by the time they come, the dogs are gone. Like I know you can't control all of them and you can't watch all of them. I'm just wondering what else can we do, or how soon of a response? I know a lot of things have been addressed in the bylaw and everything, but I know it is still going to be a difficult job. I just not sure what we can do. It's just a comment.
Anna?
I would say education would probably be the biggest one. Advising owners of the canine control bylaw and that they can't have their dogs run at large. If Ken has something further to add to that, education would be my biggest recommendation for that one.
Thanks, Hannah. Ken?
yeah,
Thank you.
through your worship, education is always the best tool. One of the challenges when we have a program that is after hours and it is contracted is that you're not always going to get and even if it was in-house, you're not necessarily going to get an immediate response to the situation. So after hours response for things like this, unless we were staffed to have 24-hour support, which we're not directly, we have it contracted. It's not necessarily guaranteed. It's not, it takes time for someone to get out to the situation. So we're the best that we can do, I think, at this point between the contracted service is add in an educational component, which we'll be taking advantage of through things like tax bills or any of the newsletters that we send out to continue to educate the public on that. We certainly did that once we became aware of Parvo when it was going around, and we'll continue to do that.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, John. Monica?
So just to that point, I have a comment and a question. So just want to thank and appreciate the comments from Councillor John and from our staff here, Ken. It's because I do understand that for rural areas where properties are at large, and there may be limited equitable way of being able to have leashing and enclosed provisions fairly enforced. So I do find that to be a challenge. In comparison with the subdivision, which I do agree with Councillor John, I do see a lot of dogs in a lot of areas that are off leash. And yes, we're in a rural area, so it's just trying to find that balance. So that's more of a comment. So I am appreciative of the efforts to take a look at this particular matter. But just to the last point about implementation and communication, what public education or strategy do we have in place just to ensure that residents are informed about these bylaw changes? And I know you mentioned the tax bill, especially for those with existing dogs and kennels, to the point of the resident that came up earlier about not necessarily knowing of the changes. So just for the benefit of the public and just for us to know as well, could you just comment on that?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So through you, your worship, just specific to these amendments, the kennel owners were actually hand delivered by staff. The initial invitation to the public meeting that we were having after council gave direction. And if I'm not mistaken, Hannah can nod, the reports, the report itself was hand delivered for today's meeting. And so we're intending to likely deliver the final report as well, hand delivered. In terms of public engagement, we continue to use all of the platforms that we have, which is Facebook, social media, the tax notices. But if there's any others that you would like to suggest that I may not be aware of, we're always happy to hear that there's a channel or another channel, I should say.
Thanks, Ken. Sorry, George, not right now. Barb?
Thank you. And through you, getting back to the amendments to the canine control that we specifically directed staff to work with the kennel operators, breeders to address the concern about inspections. I think the conversations that we're having about how we're doing on canine control can be addressed and need to be addressed, because we hear the concerns from the residents that they call the after hours and say, yep, somebody will get in touch with you on Tuesday, or, they can't get there in time. And to the point of the open forum, containing a dog that you're not aware of when you have livestock of your own is perhaps not as reasonable. So I think this is a much bigger conversation that we have to have. It's probably always every term of council. Canine and dog bylaws seem to take up a lot of time, but I did have some specific questions with regard to the proposed changes. So we know that they've been circulated to known kennel operators that had registered or increased. Thank you for that. The boarding kennels only, we've received the email with regard to, perhaps there could be an exemption certificate. We've heard from speakers today that they too should be inspected, but to what degree if the dogs are not
permanently housed in that facility, they're, whether it's a doggy daycare or you need to show to someone, perhaps if you're not having a vet inspection of your facility, then a documentation inspection by MSS that you are requiring vaccination certificates for every dog that comes into your facility, whether that's for one day or a week. I think that is an angle that we can look at. But certainly I agree with the speaker that whether it is the breeders are having vet inspections annually, they provide that vet certificate to the township that their facility has been inspected, their dogs are well cared for. That is, I think we've addressed that concern. It's whether or not the dogs are permanently raised and inspected by vets when you rely on the owner to provide that certification. So I know we're not approving the bylaw today, but maybe there's an angle there that if you're not going to have a vet inspection, then the certificates of your client registry should be provided. It can be redacted, but I'll leave that with staff because you have the expertise. So the proof of vaccination, when you, and through you to Ken, the removal of the cost for adoption. Can you just elaborate? I was a little confused as to, we're not passing on the cost. That's going to be a taxpayer borne expense because if you pull in a dog and we're boarding it and you're putting it out for adoption, there are expenses. I know when I've adopted my dog from a animal control, there's the expense of shots or spading or whatever it is. We're not passing that cost on as an adoption fee, or we are, but it's not all of the costs. Could you explain? Thank you.
Through you, we have had adoption agencies reach out to us and state that they will not take dogs because they have to take it to the vet and they have their own costs. They will not take dogs from Southgate if they have to give all the money to their profit, which a lot of time isn't profit. It's to cover their cost to find a home for them. So again, like I said, there's been 2 that have reached out to us and say, if we're going to take all the money, they're not willing to house our dogs, which therefore they're going to stay in an impound for X amount of days. It's a tricky one, but our Southgate dogs won't go anywhere except for the impound if they're not essentially found in adoption.
Through your
Yeah.
worship, I think the way we're looking at this is what is the lesser of the cost? And what is the implication of actually getting these dogs adopted? Because if the costs are passed on, at least from the 2 agencies that have talked to us, the chances of the dog eventually finding its forever home is virtually nil. And then the dog stays impounded. And then you have to start making some decisions that are not necessarily the best decisions to be making. So from our perspective, if there's a way to allow these dogs to move into a facility that could get them to a forever home, yes, there is some impact to the township, but that impact is less than what would likely happen if the dog can't even be moved into that program. The boarding costs just would continue to go up and up.
Go ahead.
So thank you for that, because I wasn't sure who was bearing the cost of adopting a dog, but it's actually the shelter that will take the dog to rehome the dog is not going to be passed on the expense of what we've incurred to that point in time.
Through your worship, that's my understanding.
Okay, and so this is education as well. We are no longer rehoming animals. So this new service that we have through Owen Sound doesn't do rehoming. They're not actively looking for, they just retrieve the dog, house the dog, and then give it to a shelter to rehome the dog.
Bill?
Through you. So I believe shelters reach out to our kennel. And that's how they get the dogs. And our contractor looks for adoption agencies for dogs that have been in impound for X amount of days. And again, to go back to this, it's just a adoption fee. It wouldn't cover the kennel fees anyways.
Right.
So we're trying to take this out of the bylaw to promote dogs finding their forever homes.
Okay, and that is our number one goal. If the owner cannot be traced because they haven't registered their dog, and or the owner says, I don't want the dog back, we want to find the dog a home. And that is our number one priority.
Yeah, through you, if the owner is known, they are responsible they incur all the fees.
Right.
And then it goes to an adoption agency.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying the cost. So I think my only concern is having some form of validation, to the speaker's point earlier, that if you are strictly an in-home boarding facility, as opposed to a breeding facility, that you are proving annually that you can safely board dogs, and you can prove that you are requiring the necessary certifications from the owners of veterinarians, and that it is a healthy environment for those dogs. That would be my only recommendation. I'm really pleased that staff have spent so much time with a number of kennel, maybe not all of the breeders or kennel operators, but you've gotten a diverse selection of voices. And so thank you for doing all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Jason?
I guess it's of my opinion, I think what kind of a kennel it is, either or, I think going with the vet inspection is the best. You know, we know what the vet, he knows best. We could have people on this MSS that we don't know who they are. I've asked a question before. We don't know who the employees are, or what knowledge they have. So if the vet is doing, I'm not sure this is true, if the vet is doing the inspection, we've contracted with MSS so much a year, and now they're not gonna do an inspection. So, or are they still gonna do one? I'm not real sure on this.
So through your worship, the amendment would remove the inspection that would be required under the current bylaw to be done by the township. So no, MSS would not do that. And in fact, as this issue came up, MSS has done no inspections to my knowledge. That we directed them to put that on pause while we deal with this.
Yeah, well, that's a concern to me. I want the vet done, so we give this company all this money. Now they're gonna be doing less stuff. And we hear complaints all the time about this company. So I think it's time we looked at them and get some answers, because that's a whack of money they're getting for what they're doing, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, okay, I get it, after hours, you can't get there in time. Maybe they should have a guy living down here instead of in Chatsworth, Owen Sound, or wherever. Yeah, we gotta look into this, I think. As far as the vet certificate, I think we have a vet certificate, good to go.
Thank you. Barb?
Councillor Rice raises a good question, but with regard to the kennel inspections that we were going to have MSS do, they were going to charge extra for that. That's not part of their base fee, correct? That's why we were going to pass on the expense of the inspection to the kennel operator, which started this conversation in the first place.
Bill?
Through you, yeah, that was a cost recovery we were gonna charge the $200 maximum, up to 200 maximum.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, as we pointed out at the start, this is just to receive the report and the draft. All those in favor? Oh, Barb, go ahead.
So the conversations that we've had today are, staff are going to take those back and consider that and bring back the final bylaw, because it says consider the final amendments to both bylaws at the September 17th council meeting. So
Through your worship, correct.
thank you.
Yep. Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. As to Councillor Rice's suggestion about MSS, are we gonna look at MSS in a different sentence, or is it going to be a part of this bylaw?
Staff have heard the concerns, and if they need to bring an additional report back related to that matter specifically, they will do that. But as far as today's amendments, that's not part of this discussion. Okay, call the question. All those in favor to receive the report? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, now we'll go back to the start of our agenda. We have 2 delegations and presentations. The first one is Community First Housing, Affordable Housing presentation. We have Liz Buckton here from the Grey County. She is the senior policy planner with the county. So Liz, welcome. Good to see you. The floor is yours. I will remind the delegations that we have 10 minutes for delegations presentations. I don't have a stopwatch, but I'm gonna be mindful of time. So Liz, welcome. Floor to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sorry, is that on? Are you able to hear through that? Okay, wonderful. Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I can say that, and Deputy Mayor Jabrin, I may mess up and call you Councillor again, but all respect intended for sure. Thank you so much for having me here today. So I'm Liz Buckton, as you noted, Senior Policy Planner with Grey County. And I was invited to join you to present today by the Community First Housing Group, who I understand has had some conversation with council and staff as well, relating to the matter of housing affordability. Okay, so I tend to be a wordy person. I'm going to be very concise today. So we've made sure that you have the slides with you so that you can unpack any of the information that I may not speak to. But generally, this is what we will briefly touch on in our time together. So first off, a very wordy slide and intentionally so. And so really my intention here is to identify the fact that the housing challenges around affordability and affordable supply that we're experiencing in Ontario and Canada, it's a multifactorial issue. That's how they arise. And as a result of that, also there's no one single silver bullet solution associated either. So I think the approach here is to be very aware of those various factors. They do shape the system of housing, but ourselves, we really need to be focusing in on that lower portion of the graph there. So those various different elements or factors that fall within our municipal sphere of control or our sphere of influence, for example, through advocacy. And I think it's a good thing. Many of these actions do relate to our core business as municipalities, our core roles. And so I think oftentimes when we're talking about housing supply and affordability and how we encourage that, it really is just looking at being creative and collaborative and using the tools that we do have already, perhaps in different ways. The topic of roles, of course, is important. It comes up in every conversation around housing. And I think there has been a bit of a lack of clarity around how those roles are shared and distributed amongst the levels of government. For Grey County, on our part, we are the mandated housing service manager by the province. And through that role, the focus is around subsidized housing for the most part, as well as shelter provision and homelessness diversion and support. The county delivers approximately 1,500 units of subsidized supply across the county. A portion of that is owned by the county and other units are owned by nonprofits that we work in partnership with. this supply is challenged, and I know that certainly the housing staff has provided updates to County Council around that. Today, I'll just suffice to say that we do have a growing wait list. It's growing by approximately 80 to 85 households a month that are eligible for that program. And at the current moment in time, the wait list is about 5 years for placement if you're on that list. That's a long time to wait for shelter. Local government, certainly at the county, we can look to add supply, and we do have plans and motions around that with the project in Dundalk on the docket as well. But, you know, I think we're recognizing, just with the cost factors and capacity factors as they are, the county will not be able to do it alone either to meet that supply. And so we really do kind of look across the community and understand that collectively we'll need to be finding ways to support some additional affordable unit creation, not necessarily as affordable or as subsidized, but certainly some below market. And so I would say that the local role is evolving, but at its core is embedded within the Planning Act, as is noted here. The Council of a Municipality, in carrying out those responsibilities, shall have regard for that adequate provision for a full range of housing options. That's further identified in policy as well. So in our provincial planning statement, we see direction here as well that we shall provide for an appropriate range and mix of housing options and densities to meet our needs by doing certain things, as are noted on the slide. And I would just highlight there the second bullet, which talks about permitting and facilitating the housing options, which I think is one of the very relevant kind of action statements within that policy document. I think it's a very useful frame to consider housing as key community infrastructure. We can certainly be proactive to support the range of options, or we can be reactive and respond to the lack of supply. You know, at its extreme, we see that in the form of homelessness, and that is something that we are addressing and dealing with here in Grey County, as in many other communities. You know, I think not just in terms of outcomes around homelessness, but also there are other impacts as well. And so that's something that we did see come up quite a bit in our economic development master plan consultations, is the concerns regarding mobility for economic reasons as well, and the challenge that a lack of affordable housing creates in terms of employee attraction and retention. Thankfully, there are lots of things that we can engage with at the local level to try and shift the needle here. So in terms of coordinating and structuring a response to the local housing challenges, the county has prepared a housing action plan. It does focus on the various actions that are noted here, and focuses in on supply of two different kinds. So that more deeply affordable supply that we know is needed and that the market is really challenged to produce. And then also the supply of market units because our communities are growing as well. So that will be an ongoing requirement. And I'll just know I've included the website there. So if you'd like to take a look at the housing action plan, that is available for a read online. But I've given a little sneak peek here. Get ahead of myself. So that plan, it has been developed with a systems view in mind. So housing is the output of a housing system. That housing system creates the housing the system is designed to create. And if we want to do something different, we need to shift that system. And we do that by making interventions across different lever points within that system. So policies, resource flows, our practices. And for this plan, you know, again, I think we envision leadership and coordination by Grey County, but with shared actions across levels of government and community actors. And I've just provided a snapshot there of some of the actions that are included, just to give you a flavor of the types of things that are included in the plan. You know, I don't think we're talking way out in left field. I think we are, you know, focused on things that are very much already in your wheelhouse. Alongside the housing action plan, and in considering how to embody these facilitatory roles, we did feel that it was important to connect ourselves together for some co-learning and discussion as well. And so with the rollout of the affordable housing plan, we also established a community of practice of staff. So that's been up and running since late 2023. We're getting together roughly every other month, every third month for a conversation. And we're bringing together planning and economic development at the county around the housing action plan, our community services staff at the county around their mandated prescribed plan, and local municipal staff as well for those discussions. But I think if you look at that slide, you can see certainly there are various other actors in our community that would have a vested interest in housing and housing supply and affordability. And we really see, or I guess I think we envision that, you know, this would be best addressed, this issue would be best addressed if the whole community were engaged in solution finding and implementation and working together to our own strengths. And so we will be looking at that interface and the communications that may be required with those other actors through some strategy writing we'll be doing later this year. So how to operationalize this permit and facilitate in our local organizations? So, you know, I think generally what we've seen other local municipalities do so far is to kind of build from that list of actions identified within the county's housing action plan. That's looked like official plan and zoning bylaw updates, looking at processes to build in greater efficiency, looking at community improvement plans and local incentives. Through work with the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, we've also prepared a document called How Can Your Municipality Help? We'll make sure to send that along through the clerk so that you've got a copy of that print resource as well. And I think it really is a wide swath of actions from the very, very small to the very, very large as well. Okay, and I just ultimately, you know, I put this here because I've heard, and I'm not from this table, you know, but we're so constrained and we're in these structures, and how do we do anything novel? I would say that we do that all the time. So we certainly do have the planning hierarchy that we are responsible to deliver and uphold. Similarly, we're bound by the municipal structure and the requirements of the Act. But we do create vision and mission statements, which articulate how we're going to use the agency and leeway we have within the various ways we deliver our roles. I would suggest for housing, this would be a very similar exercise. You know, I think essentially it comes down to applying that affordability and housing lens to all of the things that we do, all of the rest. You know, affecting those areas where we do have some discretion. And I think we could call this entrepreneurship, right? We're seeking opportunities for innovation and improvement, ways to use our tools and capacities in different ways to either solve a problem or to grow a solution. And we can be really clever about it. And so multi-solving, I'll just pepper in here is an idea. You know, I think about climate change, built interventions around energy efficiency, that too has an affordability impact on the life cycle of that building. So sometimes we can be very clever and combine solutions as well. Okay, but I'll just come back here to my main message, which is really that, you know, we do envision this future where we have kind of the structure of municipal government, local and county, working together within the networks of our community and all of those other local actors in a place where our housing goals and that greater supply across this price spectrum is centered, and we're all working together towards that. And so just as means of segue to the presentation we'll hear next, I have been very blessed to have the opportunity to work with the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay's learning groups over the past few years. They've done a fantastic job networking folks together, and we're starting to see spin-off groups in various communities up here, and happy to see Nola here as well. You know, I think this work has really helped us envision and start to align players around this whole community vision. And Marilyn's presentation will follow, speaking further to that and some of the system innovations that they understand through their work may be necessary to enable additional supply. And one of the areas that she'll speak to is around kind of the financial systems innovation that goes with that. And then I'll just very finally say, I'm happy to address questions. Marilyn and I are, we've had some experience now kind of tag teaming questions in a group session. So if there's anything pressing, I'm happy to address it now, or we could wait for us to respond to questions together. And then you'll just find in your packages, we did also just include a little bit of data. I couldn't find a way to fit that in seamlessly into the flow of things. But certainly we do have some Southgate related data around affordability here. limited supply of rentals really focused on single family homes as rentals, which really brings that price point up. But certainly lots of opportunity and seeing the growth that you have been seeing recently, I think that opportunity will continue. Okay, and so just noting that there as well. Wonderful. So that's my spiel. Really happy to address any questions, or like I say, defer until after Marlene's presentation as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz, for the presentation. And maybe what I'll do is I'll ask Marilyn to give her presentation, and then both can take questions when we've heard from everybody, if council's okay with that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Liz.
Sounds great.
So our next presentation delegation is from Marilyn Struthers. She is with the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay Social Finance Committee, and she's here to give a presentation on affordable housing. So welcome, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Good to see you again. Lindsay.
I
clerk.
self-adjusted.
Can we just do a vote for the last presentation?
No.
Over second or super? Thank you.
Yes, we can. Jim and Barb. So is that what we need, Madam Clerk? We're good to go now? And a vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Marilyn, sorry, I tried to get ahead of the bureaucracy, but there's no clerk, which is a good thing.
Oh, systems within systems, eh? I just need to make sure I've got the right button. Yes. Okay, we're good.
For this report, do we need a mover and second? Oh, okay. So we need a mover and seconder for this report. Monica and Jim. There we go. Now
Okay.
you're ready to roll.
Here we go. I set my timer. I think I have the timer on. Yes. Okay. So I am a volunteer facilitator with the Social Finance and Housing Group, which is hosted by the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, which is a nonprofit that convenes conversations that matter in communities. So it's been our really home to be able to move forward on thinking about the concerns that we have about housing in our community, concerns that we all share. We've been working for the last 3 years to really try and understand this housing crisis and how does it impact on us locally. And at the moment, we have probably 60 people engaged. We have 6 groups at the local community level. So we have a high level, we have our municipal, we have Liz, we have municipalities, leaders, mayors, and so on. We have 3 counties, and we have 6 community groups, one of which is the Southgate Community First Housing Group, which I know has a letter in their back pocket for you about a tax opportunity that is available through the province. So this sort of working multi-level across agencies and across governance and community organizations is really the secret sauce to the success that we've had. None of us were housing experts to start up, except maybe Liz, but we have learned our way forward into a solution for our community, and that's what we'll share with you. Now won't be the end of the line. It's simply now we have a pretty good vision of what we need to do to make things better. We have a toolkit, and Liz's piece and others are up on that toolkit. And NOLA actually is involved in the renovation of that kit. As we learn more, we add more. So first of all, the housing system is not working in our community or anywhere else in Canada right now. If you read the news, you see that loud and clear. It's evolved the problem has evolved in the context of the economy and government policy, but also through the narrative of development as the market opportunity for profit. The span between wages and ownership costs has widened immensely. It's not that profit is a bad thing. It's just that we're out of kilter now in the way this is working. So you can look across our landscape and see that the old system is working really well for some, but for others, not so much. So we target our view in, partly because these are our children, our grandchildren, ourselves in the group, at who was actually being most impacted by the housing crisis here. And really the answer is lower income workers. There's a homelessness problem, but we're focused very much on what's happening to our economies and to our workers. So those workers in retail, tourism, to a degree in agriculture, hospitality, healthcare, and manufacturing, for those folks, the system is now not working very well at all. And of course, there's it's like a tap. There's a drop down into the homelessness situation when others can't afford their rent. So workers in the sectors earning at the bottom half of your median income in Southgate are the ones that are in trouble. And Liz's slide, really, we have one for each of the communities now that we have done a deputation in. I invite you to pay close attention because it really shows you what the rental rates are required for the people who live here and work in our businesses. The thing about a system is that it will only, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself, will only ever achieve the outcomes it was built to achieve. So if you change the system, you change the outcomes, and we set out to figure out what those changes would be. Definitions in this are important. You've probably heard a bajillion definitions emerge over the last 3 years around affordability. But in fact, Canada has a long-standing definition of affordability. It's 30% of gross income for all housing costs, includes your heat and hydro. BMO reports that the pre-pandemic Canadians spent about 35% of their income on housing. By 2023, that figure was 55%. By the spring of 2024, the cost of home ownership alone requires 63.5% of a family's income. So you can see that this is somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50% of income that homeowners and renters, employed people, have less to spend in our local businesses. That matters for all of us. You can see the documentation. I know Southgate's Community First Group put a report to council. You could see some of the fallout from that. We're seeing that across the 3 counties we work in, an increase in food programs, food banks, that sort of thing. And a real problem with people in some places on the street. Not to mention Liz's comment about the housing wait list in Grey County. I calculated that as increasing 250% over 3 years. That's because people who are working are now on that list. At least in part, it is that. So in the search for systems innovation, the core question, take it home, tattoo it on your arm, is if we were 10 times bolder and more collaborative in our region, what would we be doing? So here's the problem as we finally have come to define it. Market builders are telling us, we've talked to a lot of them, they can't build to the $900 to $1,200 a month, maybe $1,400 a month to service that lower half of median income folks. Municipalities, all of us, have the responsibility for development approvals, but we haven't really done a lot of development planning in the past. We haven't looked at what kind of development opportunities will house the people who live here. It's more been seen, I think, as development opportunity to improve the community or for market profit. And that's a problem when our builders say they can't build to the rate that we need. We released, we actually asked that question, the 10 times bolder question, to about 50 municipal councillors in 2024 and citizens and developers. We said if we were 10 times bolder and 50, it would, and we asked the 10 times bolder, more collaborative question to about 50 members of our community. And what we heard from them, we developed into the whole community approach to affordable housing. That has 3 elements that you see. So this doesn't come from a government, it's come from our community, it's come from ourselves. We need to do 3 things to shift our system. We need to support increased capacity in our non-market developers. Those are the nonprofits, the co-ops, the charities, the churches that are traditionally have been involved in housing. We need to focus our municipal development and county policies on affordable units. June Porter, who's a Town of Blue Mountains counselor, envisions a whiteboard in every development decision that says we need this many units at this cost price for these folks to move in. This isn't simple, but we do need to do it. We have begun an analysis actually in Owen Sound with the help of their staff. They've developed what they believe to be the list of affordable housing units in Owen Sound, where the average rental rate we need is between $900 and $1,200 a month. But it's stuck because we see the subsidized housing units mixed into that affordable data. So what's happened just really recently within the last month is the Ontario Co-op Housing, United Way of Toronto, and AMO have released a new definitional distinction that we will ask municipalities to pay attention to. We're looking at deeply affordable housing. That housing is rent geared to income or has some kind of subsidy. That's the kind of housing the county's involved in and responsible for. And, you know, Ontario and the feds. But a part of that affordable housing is what they call, and we're going to pick this one up because it's great, moderately affordable housing. That's housing that is not subsidized, but comes closer to what we need in the provincial definition of 30% of income at the 60th percentile of income. So that is our workforce, folks. That's what we're talking about, aiming toward. Some people have done really well. There's lots of second houses. There's, you know, Airbnbs and that kind of thing in many of our communities. But basically, we have a big problem with that segment of working population right now. We're seeing finally the a lack of capital and financing for non-market developers that have traditionally been in this space. It's not government funding. It is not government housing. It is nonprofit housing, community-owned housing. So we needed also, as a third tenant, to find a way to create more capital flowing into our community. Those are the things that we have mostly focused on in the last while. And here, I'll just talk about how we can do this. So these non-market affordable housing folks already exist and are moving closer to being, we have in Ontario this amazing shift as communities come up with the same solution. We thought we had invented the solution, but we're actually finding an ecosystem of non-market housing across Ontario developing now. And part of that is training and support to help people to take up this role. We have frequently heard from churches saying, we have a building, what do we do now? So the community's ready to pitch in on this, but can't do it alone. They need municipal priority set on those kind of affordable units, those kind of development when you see that come by. And we need to think really hard about how they finance. So the fastest solution to increase the supply of affordable rental right now is affordable rental, whether we're purchasing or we're buying. And those non-market providers, many of them will move into a purchase role if we can figure out the capital piece. What we want from you are these 5 things. Priority on affordable development. We want you to look at the data-driven tools to identify the affordability requirements right here in Southgate. We want efficient development practices and concessions on priority. We all hear from market developers that the lead times, time is money. You can really believe if you take profit out of that enterprise, that is even more true. We need collaboration for learning and scale. We've got municipalities now. Collingwood's part of our group, just won an award from Roma for their ADU policy. We want to be able to share those successful policies so people aren't building from the ground up every time. And we want you to engage with social finance opportunities. And here's where I'm going to take a few minutes because this will be new to most of you. Community finance is the way that we are looking to support non-market development of housing. That non-market development, once we have it in our community, stays affordable by mission in perpetuity, because that's the way nonprofit organizations work. Can't sell your units and build a Dairy Queen there. It has to, that asset remains as part of the community. So now we look to how does the community actually support the financing of those small organizations to begin to build. And that we've spent quite a lot of time on. We have a really dynamic finance circle right now, finance people and business people and housing people working together. And you can see that if you have a commercial development, best case scenario, you got local business that buys and hires locally, but the profit remains in private, and it responds to market opportunities. These non-market developments, we're calling additive economics. The funds flow within the community. So essentially, we can bring government grant money into a non-market development. We can bring sources of community capital, community bonds, surplus lands, charitable lending. These things are cooking like crazy in Ontario. That's really, really working. I've worked for the nonprofit sector for 50 years, watching how money flows. This is an opportunity in part because of the housing crisis that we've never had before. So Tapestry Capital right now issues community bonds for housing. They have $111 million out in bonds in Canada. Community money, 40,000 investors that have actually created that investment. So we have to look at how our local wealth supports local housing for local people as a portion of our development planning. And of course, if it's local builders, the asset remains in the community, controlled by a nonprofit organization on mission. That asset is leverageable, and they become like nonprofit developers. And this last week, there were 3 different courses for groups announced to be able to work this process through. So here's the map. I'm slightly over my 10 minutes. We need to build some things to make this work. The community stuff is the green stuff. The blue stuff is things we need our counties and municipalities to build to be able to get this off the ground. Right now on the community side, we have a group looking at land trusts and how they work. We have a regional community development organization in development. You'll hear some announcements about that before long. And that group will not only develop, but to support the churches and others to begin to develop along this line. We have regional citizens groups, and we are working towards, this finance circle is working towards a regional community wealth social finance strategy. And would we ever love to have some municipal staff on that group? It's a pretty interesting conversation, 1 hour a month, lunchtime. Here's what we want municipalities to do, the regional affordable housing table, so that you can keep an eye on how this looks. Regional communications campaign, use Liz's brilliant data, and participate with us in social finance strategies. Most of our community wealth is held in our municipalities. So we have to figure out how to work that out. And so finally, the old architecture, counties, municipalities, commercial developers, non-market developers, there's a few, banks and credit unions, community foundation. The new architecture is that plus a land trust charity that can hold surplus land and can put it into the best development possibility at the moment. A nonprofit organization that supports non-market housing, a community wealth strategy that we've all been part of building. Invite us to Southgate to talk about what it could look like here. That's the approach we are using. And finally, a regional affordable housing table that we're asking our municipalities and county to put together so that we can look across and monitor our system of housing so that it works for people who live here. Thank you. Sorry, I'm slightly over my minutes.
Thank you, Marilyn. No, very good presentation. Thank you very much. So we've heard from Liz and Marilyn now. Any questions from council? Monica, sorry.
Looks like you're combining our names, Marilyn, Monica. So just wanted to, just through you, Mayor, to Ms. Buckton and Mr. Others, thank you for such an informative presentation. And also just having a lot of history in my own working career for public health and housing. Just really touching on a lot of things I've seen myself. Just a quick comment and then a question. With regards to housing, I'm a strong believer that housing is healthcare. They are interchangeable and they do go together. I also think that data-driven decision making is very key and we don't have enough of it. It does drive policies. And then also, with that being said, we know the stress of housing instability. Um, it does lead to worsened health and outcomes, increased reliance on services, and can create generational cycles. Addressing this is not just an economic or planning issue, it's a moral and public health imperative. I also believe, and there's been data to support that there is increased encampments that are happening Ontario-wide and beyond, and specific to Southgate. I also just wanted to mention that I think is maybe underreported as to what's really happening. So this leads to my question, which you just touched on the last point for regarding the community finance instruments. So I'm very intrigued by that mention, and with the community bonds and land trust, has Southgate considered exploring these alternative funding strategies to attract both public and private partners, especially with workforce housing?
Marilyn?
Thank you. And thanks for that question. It's my favorite subject these days. It is just such an innovative approach to think about financing circulating within a community, as opposed to development being something where, you know, you make the approvals, you gain the what you can, but basically the profit and so on goes out of the community. So in a community wealth strategy, we are looking at a number of components. We are a region of very small communities, right? So if we approach CMHC with a Dundalk project, for example, it doesn't hold up against Toronto, Kingston, Oakville. But we actually have regionally the same population. We have greater population than Kingston or Oakville. I looked this up the other day. So when we work collaboratively and approach traditional grantors as a project within a region, as opposed to a project within a municipality, we are much more likely, I think, to see funding. And as Mark Carney gets the new housing structure that we haven't seen yet forward, that is one finance strategy to act collaboratively. And that's why we've created the Community Development Organization. So it could actually take municipal projects forward under an umbrella. The second thing that's important about scale is that one by each, you can put out a community bond for a project in Dundalk, for an example. That might not be a bad idea. But if we do that repeatedly across our region so that people become familiar with using part of their investment portfolio to support local, and we develop the track record that's been developed in other communities, we can start to see community bonds as a standard way that we support the first capital outlay. So one of our members is Lutheran Social Services in Owen Sound, has the large 6-story building, 7-story building on the main street, on 10th Street. They're building also a second large building, St. Clair's. This is a charity. St. Clair's Place has been 7 years in the making. 7 years, and much of that is working through the process and waiting for CMHC. Working through the process and waiting for CMHC. If we could go a step further with the community finance idea and create a community fund, there are 50 community funds, 50 philanthropic funds in Canada right now that support specific issues. Some of them are in housing. There's a big one going into Hamilton in housing. Then we could say, we'll advance you that $250,000 you need to get to a quicker response from CMHC. So in fact, we could combine traditional sources of finance for housing, add on community sources of finance for housing, and maybe there's way for municipalities to contribute to that kind of a fund. I don't think anyone's done it, so that's an innovation we're daydreaming about, and remove the profit motive for that housing. And because it's affordable by mission rather than by market, it stays in perpetuity in our communities. So this right now is an opportunity to get a handle on how the financing can support an expansion of that sector we already have. And like I said, we thought we'd invented this, but we didn't. And I think one of the things I've loved about working in the nonprofit sector, as long as I have, is good ideas arise here, 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 here. Then we join them up and then we develop the expertise. And that's exactly what's happening in community finance right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Joan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's going to be for both of you. Thank you for your detailed report. As a social development consultant, I have the privilege of working with individuals who are seeking to find affordable and attainable housing. I personally don't know what that is right now because there is none that we can find. And as you spoke about the 30% growth and the 62%, most of these individuals have to think if they're going to pay rent, mortgage, or food, which leave us again. And another concern is the builders can't build to serve the need of the affordable. So how are we going to do that? One of my difficulty is that you have this great report and we have all these recommendations for the municipalities and the counties and everything. What level of government can implement these recommendations and how are we going to get it working and get it into an action plan and start getting affordable or attainable housing?
That's a great question. We'll let Liz have the first crack.
Yeah, so it's a big messy issue, right? And I think we tend to try and simplify in our heads. Well, we want affordable housing, and we put that lens on all of the housing. And so I think one of the reasons why we tease that out in the housing action plan is we really do think that there's different tools that apply to different types of housing that we're trying to create. So, I think the development that is coming to us, that it is motivated by market opportunity. That's that more expensive housing, more so towards the ownership side of housing, which does require a higher income to support through a household. So that's one type of housing. And I think we do have to plan and facilitate that and make sure that we're doing good planning around those market opportunities. I think what's being contemplated here is just a shift in focus around that particular bucket of housing, which we think is comprised of kind of non-market generally and similar types of housing. And I think that, as Marilyn notes, right, the opportunity there is to try and build the partnerships, the network, and the land holding, as well as the financial tools to really facilitate that is almost like a subsystem within the system locally, I think is maybe how we could view that. And so these pieces of the ecosystem that the Institute has identified and are trying to advance with community partners are starting to build those pieces that would hold the capacity that we need. So I think, back to the beginning, there's no silver bullet. I think it will take some time. I think resourcing, of course, is always a challenge, and certainly we're trying to kind of explore that. And what I would note is under the Housing Action Plan, like we do have that fulsome list of options. So just give you an example. So right now we've got some land the county owns in Markdale. It's about a 2-acre parcel. It's proximate to services. It's on a main street. It's near the right in the downtown. And so we've been looking at that as a pilot at the county. How do we go about looking at those land holdings where we may have land or we may be able to acquire land to prepare it? We're looking at grant opportunities to feed into preparing those lands so that they're more palatable for a partnership or a nonprofit to take on. we're being mindful of the site preparation that needs to go into that and the siting of the land and all of the characteristics so that it will meet the federal granting requirements. We're building relationships with the local council that would be able to support a future application. So it's like building in all of the pieces around an opportunity. And as we're building this network, we now have people associated with different capacity that we can pull in that as well. And so I think you're right. The lack of supply is a real challenge. It's going to take us time to get there. I think we're about 30 to 50 years kind of behind in terms of how housing has been funded federally as well. So we've got some ground to make up. So, all to say that no silver bullet, but yeah, it is going to be us working together in the weeds, trying to line up these pieces until we kind of get some good examples and traction to show how that comes out on a more routine basis. Was there anything you wanted to add there just around how to craft that nut, right? It's because we know the issue and that the demand is there and the need is there.
I don't think any government is going to do it. That's my short answer. And Stuart Reed with the Community Foundation is part of our group, so he speaks for philanthropy, and he thinks really hard about how that also is community wealth. And what Stuart says, nobody's coming to save us. We have to figure this out ourselves. So that's the basic premise we started with. What can we do ourselves as community? And if the government comes up with things, well, sure, we'll use it, right? But we also are not a desperately poor group of communities. We have wealth here, and we have builders here. So how do we grow that out? And that's actually what's happening in much of Ontario right now. And the cool thing is people are getting much more sophisticated about how to do it. One of the things that I love about this approach is people in Halliburton particularly, they raised $800,000 to stabilize their housing group. They have an existing housing group in a couple of months in the summer. And what they found is that when we give people the opportunity to invest in community, they understand the issues more and NIMBYism starts to drop back.
Anytime you can push NIMBYism back is a good thing, for sure. Barb, please.
I know that this conversation could be an entire afternoon, and we're limited on time, so I'll try to have my comments brief. I know that there are so many different people who are finding themselves unhoused or precarious housing. We have seniors who, as a couple, they're managing, and then a spouse passes and their income is reduced by 40%. And they can no longer afford that hydro bill or that rent that they found to be affordable. And so I think our staff have been working to chip away at streamlining process. We've introduced additional residential units in both municipal services as of right and in our rural communities. But it's expensive to build those additional residential units. I know that the county is exploring pre-approved building units like the tiny homes or modular units that could be granny suites on rural properties that, pick one of these designs and you don't have to go through, like it's already ready to go. I'm wondering if there is a granting or financial support through CMHC or other community groups that could assist those property owners who may find an additional residential unit beyond their capacity, but would be willing to invest in an additional residential unit, whether in the home or separate. If there was some financial grants available, even if they weren't renting it to a stranger, they would be intergenerational. They could be renting it to a family member, which takes that person off the wait list and opens up an opportunity for others. I know that we explored we sold property to a developer who committed to a percentage of affordable units. So we sold the property at a deeply affordable sale price, and they got held up by a conservation authority. And of course, the Rose Lane development, again, held up because of mapping errors. So I think we're all doing the right things, and we're just hitting roadblocks, and we need to just keep trudging away. And as much as our staff have tried to streamline the process and work collaboratively with the county, there's no guarantee that a market developer is going to pass on those savings. If we cut development charge, we can cut all the red tape, we can cut development charges. But the bottom line is if they can sell a house for $800,000, they will. So I like the idea of exploring opportunities with the community or those organizations that want to invest. And even if that's an investment in a private home, we're also on our agenda. Ken Melanson, our Director of Planning and Development, is bringing forward an opportunity to explore allowing more than one unit, a rental unit above a commercial property. Because right now, the zoning bylaw limits it to one, and we're going to explore if it can hold more than one, then why not? So I'm looking forward to having these conversations, but not just having conversations. To Councillor John's point is how do we get past the roadblocks?
Us too.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
very
I
much
don't even
what
know
to
if
do.
there's an answer to that question, but
Let
I
me
know
just,
there needs to be a question.
if I might just have a quick try. There are some really innovative things happening around ADUs. So there are municipalities and counties that provide a subsidy for people to be able to do it. And Liz can tell you the details of that. Yeah, there also are innovations in how organizations are working. So there is a group called Redwood Park in Simcoe County, and they've actually launched a service where they will work with perhaps an elderly homeowner, right, has a potential for an ADU, could use the revenue, but oh my goodness, that's a big task. So what Redwood will do, it's a charity, it will move in, it will, not literally, it will design that unit, it will build that unit, it'll tenant that unit, and then split the fee then. So there are things like that emerging, like Topsy, and it's almost like going through looking for needles in a haystack, many needles, as these things develop in Ontario. But what we've done is build the networks to learn where they're happening, and we're going to be doing a series in the fall of just exactly that, where it's happening. So get on the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay's mailing list, and none of us started out as housing experts, right?
Well, thank you, Marilyn and Liz. As Barb said, we could talk about this all day or all week, I'm sure. But we've got other business we need to get to, but I will ask Jason if he has a question.
Well, it's just a quick one, a great presentation. I'm kind of on the other side of this always. I've asked this question since I've been on council. What is affordable housing? And I've never got an answer. I understand what you're trying to do, and it's great. If the funding is coming from philanthropy, whatever, community groups, excellent. I hear you saying grants. We are all taxpayers. And I understand the low incomes are the ones that need the help. But the middle incomes are the ones that pay the freight in this country. And if we keep taxing them, how does that help the economy or I struggle with it. I don't know what affordable housing is. If you can afford a trailer, you can afford it. If you can afford a $3 million, I just don't know what it is. So I thought I'd ask the experts.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Councillor. Happy to take a crack at that. So without getting into kind of the broad economic system and that we've hitched our ourselves to capitalism as the mechanism by which we function, and there is wealth inequality in our society, and our systems can uphold that inequality. And so all of that is the background. Of course. And so I think, yeah, when we talk about granting, I think for the most part, we are talking about kind of that federal granting role. And so, I don't think that's a new approach. We've seen that in the past. The challenge with, so what is affordable? So I think you can look at that on a household level. And that 30% metric tries to get us there. We do have data that looks at kind of what the distribution of incomes in our community are. So that gives us an idea of, where are we trying to target? If we're saying affordable, it's going to look different in Southgate than in Town of Blue Mountains, depending on kind of the resourcing in that community. So through that household lens, can I afford a unit? Is it suitable housing? Is it healthy housing? Is it secure housing? Am I worried someone's going to snatch that out from under me because I missed my rent, or is it precarious? So there's that personal lens on it. I think in the roles that we hold, we're kind of switching back and forth between that personal view and understanding of the impacts on people, on individuals, on households, and that kind of community health top-down population statistics kind of approach, where we can kind of draw some conclusions around those social determinants of health and the fact that there are costs to all of us in community if we don't address it. So I think you're right. I don't think anybody's really looking for additional taxes on their tax bill, and it's a challenge resourcing that we have to face. I think what I would like to see is a system that takes those tax dollars and applies them judiciously and in a targeted way, and in a way that maintains a good public investment logic that says if we're putting public funds to those, then that affordability should last, that investment should last over time. And so I think, that's where we've landed with the focus on non-market housing, is because it really does, if we're going to be investing, if we're going to make that tax dollar investment there, the fact that that would stay in our community as a resource for our community, as relatively affordable in perpetuity, and later be leveraged to create more housing, that really is the logic that we're trying to maintain there. So personal view, population view, slightly different lenses we have to apply there, but affordable, ultimately we want everybody to have a roof, and it is foundational to everything else in their lives. So that's really the goal. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz. Well, thank you again, Marilyn and Liz, for your presentation this morning, and Marilyn, and I'm sorry I don't know the other lady, but Nola. Yep. Thank you very much for attending today. So we've had a really good discussion, and you planted some good seeds. So we'll,
happy to continue at any point in time.
we'll continue the collaboration. Thank you so much. So I'll ask the call to vote to receive the report. All those in favor? That is carried. We're going to adopt the minutes, then we're going to pass the motion to go in closed meeting, and then we're going to have a recess. Is that okay? Okay. Adoption of the minutes of the August 6th, 2025 council in closed session, moved by Jim, seconded by Jason. All those in favor? That is carried. Be it resolved that council proceed in closed session at 10:38 in order to address matters relating to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically a litigation update, and a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, specifically disposition of land update, and that all those required remain in attendance. Someone care to move that, please? Barb and Joan, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Let's take a 5-minute recess, and then we will proceed into closed session. Okay. We're back in session. And I can confirm that we only discussed those items on the closed meeting agenda. So, reports of municipal officers. Emergency services, we have a report regarding fireworks exemption request at Full Throttle Motor Speedway. Someone care to move that, please? Jason, seconded by Chief Melnick is on the line. Welcome, sir. Anything you'd like to relate about the report?
Just with this report, so Full Throttle is looking for exemptions for two championship weekends that they're doing back to back. There's been some issues regarding the applicant not coming forward and getting exemptions in the past. So staff had a meeting with the applicant and got them to submit for this exemption. Moving forward, the applicant's willing to work with township staff to have a meeting prior to releasing their racing schedule for the year, at which point we will bring an exemption prior to council ahead of that release of the schedule to get approval for any firework exemptions before it's published. I can confirm as well that in talking to the applicant, they are the owner of the property.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. So I heard you, and I just want to confirm that the applicant is the owner of the property.
The applicant has identified themselves to staff here that they are the owner of the property.
Okay, good. Any questions? Barb.
Thank you. And through you, thank you, Chief, and thank you for bringing this. I know that I'd had a couple of residents mention that they weren't complying with to the same degree as others. But why two championships? I mean, if you have a championship, it's a championship. How can you have two championships unless it's two categories? Maybe I just answered the question. And they've had fireworks pretty much all summer on a schedule. Are they leaning to one over the other, or are they set that this is the two dates that they want? And what have they done to notify the neighboring residents? Have they taken out an ad? Did they send flyers in the local mailboxes? Because I haven't gotten a response from any of the community that I know out there as having received a communication. Thank you.
So through the mayor, with regards to that, the championship weekend, they have a variety of different classes of cars. And to put it all on one weekend or on one race night is not possible. So I think there's 8 or 9 different classes of cars, races. So 4 will go on one night, for example, and 4 will go on the next weekend. And they're looking for the fireworks for both. I do not know exactly what they did to notify the residents. They have just checked that box off and have verbally told us they have communicated with the residents and they are aware of it. I know there's been some issues with the past for this. The applicant is fully willing to, the end of this season, sit down with staff and work on the schedule for next year. So.
Thank you. And do we have a requirement or if we grant a noise exemption, I think they're supposed to take an ad out in the paper. Can we require them to at least notify that there will be fireworks on those evenings if this is granted? And second of all, I really do appreciate them coming forward and asking for the exemption, because it notifies the fire departments in the area that they are holding it. So if there's complaints, but also through this process, you verify that they follow all of the right protocols for those display fireworks, like fire suppression. They've got, they're properly trained to set off the fireworks. Is that part of that process?
Yes, so through the mayor, so they're not display fireworks they're using consumer fireworks that you buy at a local store. They're setting them off in the center of the track. They do have fire extinguishers present for that. As for the noise bylaw, I don't believe it will come into effect as fireworks are being let off at around 9 o'clock. So it's not after 11 o'clock where they're looking for an exemption. Currently in our firework bylaw, there is no requirement to notify the residents in the vicinity. Just on our application, it asks if they have.
Lindsay.
I just want to confirm to your comments, Deputy Mayor, the noise bylaw does not require an ad being taken out in the paper. I just wanted to. No.
Any other questions? Question I had, Chief, in regards to past practice at the Speedway, I understand correctly, or I think I understand correctly that they have done fireworks displays in the past with no permission given to do that. Given that the owner is not new to the community, they've done fireworks in the past, like past seasons. Have they asked for exemptions or asked for permits in past seasons to do fireworks?
Yeah, so I believe it was last year they came forward and asked for an exemption. So they were able to achieve the exemption for a select couple of the races. I am not aware sort of what happened after that. I do know, like you said, they haven't asked for exemption after those dates. Moving forward, though, again, we have the owner that said he is fully committed to sit down with staff in the winter months to plan ahead and come for an exemption prior to releasing the schedule to try and move past anything that's happened in the past and get on the same page moving forward.
But it seems a little disingenuous to need a permit in the last couple seasons and yet go ahead this year without permits and then plead ignorance. Maybe just my interpretation. Any other questions from council? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carries. Thank you, Chief. Okay, moving on. Economic Development Department. Brenna has been very patient. Welcome, Brenna. You have a report here regarding Rural Ontario Development Program application. Someone care to move that, please? Monica, seconded by Joan. Thank you. Brenna, welcome.
Hello, good morning, Council and Mayor. Thank you so much. This is a presentation as we're interested in applying for the Rural Ontario Development Program, which was formerly known as the RED or Rural Economic Development Program. Essentially, this program from the Ontario government, there's 4 different intakes, and for this first intake, we're interested in applying for a project specifically related to our downtown Dundalk revitalization. We'd like to apply for a project of $70,000, of which we have to cost share $50,000. This is to have rendering done for our downtown to showcase what the streetscape and buildings could look like to promote potential investment. So we've been working with our downtown revitalization task force to, get feedback for this application. We've gathered tons of data from the community, business owners, and downtown customers, and feel that this would be a great way forward because people can't really see beyond some of the disrepair of the downtown buildings. So this having professional design renderings done and then promoting those investment opportunities for potential renovations and new businesses in the downtown would be advantageous. So, and this intake, what we're proposing would be due to have our application in by September 24th. So I'm seeking approval from council to apply for this, and any feedback or questions I'm welcome to take now. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenna. Any questions from council? Jason.
Read the report. It's a good report, Brenna. I get what we're trying to do, but when I get down to the financial and resource implications, and I see approximately 50% of the allocated costs will be to engage the service of a consultant to produce renderings. I'm not a consultant fan, but that's you know, the committee that's put together, I would have hoped that they would. I get what you're saying with the drawings and that, but to me, that's the 50,000 just for drawings to see what it could be is just, to me, yeah, I don't know if I can support it or not. That's just a comment.
Any other questions? Joan, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Brenna, I was a little bit concerned about that 50,000 too. Why do we have to, out of that 70,000, if we do go ahead with the 35? And I was thinking 35 was a little much out of the reserves because I'm thinking maybe we want to put some of this reserve to Swinton Park or to something else. I know it's something different, but don't we also have two other things that we're doing downtown? I know you had another downtown revitalization thing that we were doing. But just out of the 70,000, we'll be putting 50,000 to a consultant. Not too sure about that. Explain it a little bit more.
Yes, so this is part of the downtown revitalization process. I would say that we are doing this process in-house. Most municipalities don't do it in-house, so I'm doing it all myself, which usually it would be a consultant that would do that part, which would engage the community, run the committee, all that stuff. But we are able to do that in-house, which is a huge cost-saving measure because it's like the in-kind, you know, staff support that we already have from the economic development officer. For these design renderings, there's a lot that needs to be done to the downtown, especially related to accessibility, you know, signage, enhanced facades, what to do with boarded up windows, also wayfinding signage systems, which could be part of this consultant process, to install a wayfinding system to get people into the downtown, would be a great idea, but we have to design it. I'm not a designer. I can't do that myself. And within our committee, those are all volunteers. So it is kind of a lot to ask a volunteer to do those designs, and we don't necessarily have that expertise. So I do understand the concerns, although half of the cost would be covered. And we're already doing this whole program in-house. So it's actually just to get professional services, as well as we need to make sure we do high quality marketing for the downtown, because there's so much potential there that has been missed out, I think, and a lot of that has to do with a lack of marketing and promotion in a professional manner. That would be my comment.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up, but even so, if we pay 50,000 out of the 70,000, you'll only have 20,000 left to do all that work you want to get done. With the 20,000, who's doing that?
So the remaining $20,000 would be as part of the marketing process. It wouldn't be just for downtown revitalization. We can apply for other intakes of the grant in order to apply for this process. So this 70,000 is only the cost of like the total this marketing and rendering process, and also kind of doing an investment tour to show realtors, potential investors, property owners, you know, those opportunities in the downtown. So, and also utilizing the information that we have of what kind of businesses we want to see in the downtown would be part of it as well. Other communities in the area have done this. Here on Kinloss is an example of having some design renderings done of their downtown, and as well as some marketing. So it's not me just pulling this out of a hat, but it's been done by other communities.
Barb?
Thank you, and through you, thank you, Brenna. I know you're putting an awful lot of effort into this, and I want to thank the committee as well, the task force, as they were out there, you know, getting surveys. My question to this are twofold. Is this design plan, the streetscape, a requirement to qualify for other funding? So without this design plan, would we be at a disadvantage in applying for other funding, is my first question.
Thank you for your question and for you. It's not a requirement to apply for under other funding, although, I mean, you kind of need a plan of what you're gonna do to apply for funding. So, as I said, we do need kind of, if we're applying for funding for streetscape design to make the streetscape more accessible or, putting wayfinding signage in the downtown, we do need to have some kind of plan ready. And as I said, I'm not able to do those designs myself, and I don't have the professional, knowledge to know exactly how to put signage and accessibility features. So that's where we do need a professional to come in and do that so that we can apply for funding to do those projects.
Thank you. So in the past, there was and this is historical, I believe that there was a plan at some point in a previous iteration, and people said it was drab. You know, it's like, oh, you can only have gray or brown or black. So having a vision of how a downtown could be revitalized, I understand, as long as it's not too restrictive, but also if we have this design plan, are property owners required to do it, or is it voluntary? I remember reading somewhere where it's voluntary. So are we doing something that no one's going to take us up on? And will there be funding available through the community improvement plan? I mean, we're whittling away that amount. Are we going to replenish that so that we can provide incentives for, I mean, you look at Lunenburg, they painted everything as vibrant colors. I'm not saying that that's what we're doing, but the waypoint signage we've been talking about for a decade. And, your predecessors, probably 2 or 3 of them before you, had in the budget, signage to direct people to the library. But then we were waiting for the county to do the road, and everything's got to follow. So is that part of the plan? I guess if I were to summarize my questions, is it going to be voluntary if we have a plan?
Thank you for the question and through you. So for the voluntary portion, that's related to private investment. Some municipalities, they'll have kind of a design plan for their downtown and design standards, and they'll tie that to their CIP. So for example, with Mildmay has a Bavarian theme in the downtown. So business owners have to do the Bavarian features. And if a business owner says, I don't want to do Bavarian features, I want to paint my sign pink. I don't know if this is anymore, but they weren't able to receive CIP funding, but we don't have to do that. And I would suggest we don't do that because we don't want to put another barrier in place for our business owners. But we do need to make suggestions about how exactly they're going to improve their buildings, incorporate accessibility, which is a huge issue in our downtown, incorporate signage, because some of the businesses, you don't know what business it is until you're past it, right? Because they don't have extended perpendicular signage. So that's the one thing. So I would advise not to tie it to CIP funding, but give it as a suggestion. But it depends on what you want to do there. And then as per, there was a second question about design standards about wayfinding signage. That was a private or a public investment.
We've been talking about waypoint signage or directional signage to draw people to the downtown, but ran into roadblocks with MTO, or the county was going to be doing the road and they have to approve it if it's at the corner there, and all of those barriers to us having success. We need to make sure that if we're designing waypoint signage, that we have the buy-in from the province and the county as well. So we can design ourselves away and not have cooperation. That's kind of what I'm saying.
That's right. And that's a true possibility.
Jim?
Morning, good people. I think the driver of this is planting the seeds for the vision, and we've heard from the community through the strategic plan that they want to see the downtown revitalized. And we're just throwing darts at a board at certain times. And yeah, there was something done years ago. And some of those businesses have come a long way and done great improvements. So I think being able to tie in some of those reflections of what has been done will give that vision and maybe do another kickstart for downtown and hopefully bring that along. But I think that's the purpose and the driver behind this is to give some vision out there, to let others see what could be the potentials.
Jason and then Monica.
I get what you're saying, and there's nobody that'd like to see the downtown flourish more than me, but I don't understand how a rendering or a drawing, I get what you have, some, people have to see it visually. But some of these buildings they don't care. They haven't cared in the past. So we're gonna spend this money, to me, and the buildings are gonna look the same because we can't force them to do it. So I don't know. I get what we're doing. I would love to see that every store full down there, but I can't see it happening just this way. And nothing against your work. You're doing great work. Consultants.
Monica.
Thank you. Just through you, Chair, and to Economic Development Officer, thank you for your report. So I did have a few questions. One of them is regarding timing and readiness for RFP execution. So given that most of the funds would go towards the renderings, has a timeline already been mapped out for RFP issuance, vendor selection, and completion of the rendering to align with the intake window?
Thank you for the question and through you. For this funding, we would find out if we receive the funding by the end of the fall, and we would be able to initiate the project starting in January. So we would, once we received approval for the funding, then we would work at the RFP and publish that in January with the timeline, hopefully having the renderings completed by summer of next year so that we can initiate a marketing campaign and any other events related to that. So that would be the idea, although, you can plan things and they might get delayed, but that would be the plan.
Just a follow-up.
Yep, go ahead, please.
Just to that point, thank you for just giving an idea, because I can understand and see how it could be a lot of work. So I guess the word "are we confident" maybe is not the right one, but do you think we'd be able to fully execute within the calendar year to comply with the intake timing?
Yes.
It's hard to say, I guess.
No, I definitely think we'd be able to do it within the timing. It just, if we launched an RFP in January and then found a consultant midway through the winter, I think we'd be able to complete it. And yeah, now's the time to do it. We have a lot of buildings in our downtown that are starting to come up for sale. There's a lot of potential for people who could be coming in to buy those buildings, and they need to be shown what they could be from a design standpoint, but also with the data that we've gathered so far from the residents and business owners and customers of what they want to see in the downtown, what potential really viable business opportunities there could be in the downtown. So I think it's a great time, and definitely we could fit it within the timeline of next year.
Just one more quick question.
Sure.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Just on the financial point, and thanks for that. That's very insightful. Just with regards to finances, are there any external partners, real estate associations, tourism boards being approached to possibly co-fund or sponsor the investor tour or promotional materials to reduce our municipal burden? I'm not sure if that was even something that's considered.
Not at the moment. There isn't another financial partner, but we do have our community reserve funds with the funds created from the eco park that we would be hoping to utilize for this project.
Okay, thank you.
So that's where the funds would come.
Thank you.
Barb?
So my only question then is this is the first step. We have to get the funding. before we go to an RFP, before we engage a designer. And if we don't get the funding, we'll revisit how we want to proceed, whether we want to fund it through the Eco Park Royalty Fund or some other means.
Thank you. Yes. So this is dependent on funding. So I do need to, if I do get approval today, I will attach that to our application because that will make our application obviously stronger to show that actually we do have the 50% match. So yes, if we don't get the funding today, if it isn't approved by council, then we'll explore another option and then we won't submit an application. And if we don't receive the funding from the province, then we won't continue with this project. We won't use that fund. That's right.
Thank you. Just to clarify, today's decision is to approve the 50% so that you can apply. If we don't get the funding, we'll revisit the whole scenario and may go down another path or fund it a different way. But today's decision is to approve the allocation of the 50% to make our application more viable.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. That is correct. Yes.
Jim?
But the other piece of it is that we're gonna put the grant in for this project, so.
Okay, Monica.
Thank you, Chair. So just to that point, just through you, while the initiative aligns strategically, with our priorities, just was hoping for clarity with regards to whether this project would displace or delay any other earmarked initiatives from the Community Reserve Fund for 2026. Essentially, I'm just hoping that would we be able to have a projection of how much would remain in the Community Reserve Fund if the 35,000 is committed?
Kayla? Do you have a quick and rough answer?
Thank you. So currently the balance at the end of 2025 is 181,000 approximately. And that number fluctuates because it depends on the royalties. So we don't necessarily know how much is coming in. As far as going out this year, we had committed 121,000 out of that fund because we did fund some one-time projects, but there's also ongoing projects that we've funded out of it. I don't have the exact number at my fingertips, but I don't think, in my opinion, the 35,000 would drain that reserve.
Okay, Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brenna, is the application 100% dependent on our decision today to have this sent in with the application?
Thank you, and through you. Yes, we do need to confirm that we do have funding for that 50%. If we decide today that we don't want to approve this application, we can also try again in January. As I said, there's several other intakes, but we can also utilize those for other projects. So my plan would be to utilize this broad fund at every intake, but for other projects. So yes, it is dependent. Whether I submit the application, I do need to have approval from council that we will be able to cost match the 50%.
Okay, not seeing any more questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Yes, absolutely you can. So are we finished with questions? Madam Clerk, would you take the poll, please?
Yes, recorded vote called for staff report EDO 2025-008 Rural Ontario Development Program application. Mayor Milne,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Brien,
Yes.
Councillor Rice,
No.
Councillor Ferguson,
No.
Councillor Shipston is absent, Councillor John, Councillor Singh Soares.
Yes.
By a vote of 3-3, that has lost.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brenna. Moving on to we've already done the canine bylaw amendments. So moving on to the planning department, we have a report here from Victoria. No, from Ken. regarding C2 zone dwelling units above commercial downtown. Someone care to move that, please? Sure we could. All right, Barb moves that we proceed past noon. Monica seconds. All those in favor? That is carried. So back to the report here from Planning Department. Someone care to move that, please? Barb and Jim will second. Thank you. Ken.
Thank you, your worship. Deputy Mayor took some of my thunder away during your questions to, on the affordable housing related to this, but simply put, we have a bit of a inconsistency with the C2 zone in terms of the use only being only allowing one unit, but then other parts of the C2 zone allowing multiple, suggesting that multiple units above or behind commercial is allowed. So we're seeking direction to do this outside of what we had thought would be in the zoning bylaw review. We think that's going to take too long. So we'll do this as a separate piece of work and look at just amending that, as we want to try to assist with all the work that Brenna's folks are doing in the downtown core. It's not just about focusing on attracting more business, but helping those businesses be vital and successful by having people in the downtown core to utilize those services. So I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any questions from council? Barb?
Thank you, and through you. Thanks, Ken. I see the value in it. This is not passing the bylaw. This is to go through the process of amending and going through the public process in the public meeting, right?
Correct.
You mentioned in your report the parking challenges, and will the amendments explore the parking issue for multiple units that we already see through our public works, our municipal lot being used for overnight parking from apartments over commercial buildings where they don't have parking? And, you know, a question that, you know, we'll throw out there for budget timelines and, you know, when we're looking at fees and charges, to support this, should we be looking at parking permits, overnight parking permits to allow people to rent and not be towed away from November to April, or where people could purchase an overnight parking permit, produces revenue to help maintain the parking lot if we earmarked it specifically for parking lot maintenance or development? Something to go along to support if this goes through.
So through your worship, the simple answer is yes.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing it. Oh, Joan, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ken, I think this is a great idea. I'm hoping that when these apartments get fixed up, they will be affordable and attainable. They're upstairs and they should be a little bit less expensive, and maybe people who can't afford the higher rent could be able to rent these apartments. So this is good. Thank you.
Monica.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, to our planning department, with regards to the properties in Dundalk Core, do we know how many are currently impacted by the restrictive zoning rules?
So through your worship, don't have an exact number of properties, but if you look at the map that was provided as attachment 1, any of the properties that have the C2 prefix is what would be impacted by any of the amendments, but not all of those properties are buildings that have residential units above or behind. So for example, if you look at one of the C2 zones that's on Main Street, that's actually the Foodland Plaza. So there's no residential units built on that building. It's just specifically built as a commercial development. Whereas if you look on the map, you'll see that most of the buildings that front onto Proton Street are C2. So those do or could have had and maybe are not actively used But this amendment will make it easier if someone wants to go in and reactivate those uses.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick follow-up. I'm gonna ask you to estimate again if possible, or guesstimate, but are you able to potentially estimate the increase in available housing units if this amendment passes, just for the benefit of getting a global view?
Through your worship, once again, it's a bit difficult to estimate because it's hard to say what buildings had units of, I mean, you can look on the photos that we provided. I mean, if you look at the building that has Latino, or what, yeah, not enough coffee yet this morning. The windows above are more than likely active units that are occupied. But then when you start looking at the photo I have of Proton Street, yeah, you might be able to say, okay, there are some active units in those buildings, but there might not be. They may be unoccupied. It's hard to say. Our focus, though, is that we know that there are a number of unoccupied vacant buildings in the core that could have this potential, and we don't want to have a barrier to those properties being redeveloped, that if they had multiple units before, now the bylaw is just taking away those extra ones and they just get one. We want to open up the opportunity, because the core is only successful, or I should say the core is only, the businesses are only successful if you get the people to go to them, and having people living above them gives you that even bigger opportunity to make those businesses successful.
Barb?
And I noted from your report, Ken, that there are, and we don't know for sure, it would be to the building department to determine how many units could be in that space. Right now, many of them are restricted to one, but there's sufficient space and access and egress, and building codes could allow for two. So this actually, in some cases, could double the rental units available in what is currently available. It also, when you're constructing the apartments, if you can build two, possibly for the price of one, let's say, it makes it more lucrative for the person who's going to be renting them. They'll have two rentals coming in instead of one for a much larger space. So it's where the planning and the building department are again working together to find solutions to our local housing issues. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Well, if I could, your worship, I would actually say it's a three-way approach, because we're also supporting economic development's efforts in the core, which is one of your strategic priorities too.
And nicely coordinated with the presentations this morning. Well done.
Absolutely, we worked on that for
Jim?
weeks.
Excuse me, I know from quite a while ago, 30 plus years ago or more, up in some of those buildings there, like they're deep, so there's more, like some of them maybe have 6 apartments. They're probably not functional these days, but there are opportunities there for sure. I'm sure that it's more than 2 in some of those instances.
Jim?
Is there a minimum like of how small they can go with an apartment? Is there like in the bylaws?
So through your worship, there isn't a provision in the zoning bylaw that I'm aware of. It would actually default to the building codes. Maybe Phil can jump in.
Through you, yeah, the building code determines the size that a 1-bedroom can be, multi-space, so you have your kitchen, like bachelor apartments, 2 bedrooms. It gives a side limitation.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
So just through you, Chair, with regards, just back on the point of parking, just to the CAO, I guess, is the parking part of the community parking solutions part of our CIP? Oh, and if not, is that something that could become part of our CIP?
Brenna or Jim?
Oh, sorry.
It is part of our CIP. Parking improvements is part of the CIP, so they can apply for, it falls under landscaping and parking improvements.
Okay.
I think it's 3,500 maximum, but I'd have to check, but it is included.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Ken?
Oh, just to go back to Councillor Ferguson's question. Actually, it does look like there are size requirements for units in the zoning bylaw. I would presume that those size requirements match the building code.
Okay, any further questions? Jim?
Just back comment on the parking piece. Some of those places don't have much space behind them as it is. They're probably could be encroaching in the rail trail. So it's limited what the parking could be available for some of those areas.
Yep. Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Well, let's do one more here and then we'll break for lunch. So the next report is regarding a zoning bylaw amendment for Ontario, or the 22-6-3467 Ontario Limited, which is Port Welding. Someone care to move? Yep, but I need a mover and seconder first. Joan and Jim, thank you. Victoria, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm joining everybody virtually today, so I'll jump in. So they're proposing an amendment to an existing zoned area for an OFDU on site at 733102 Southgate Side Road 73. It's under exception A1425. There are no existing buildings on site currently. They're just asking to change the existing, or no changes to the existing tree buffer, apologies. But staff are recommending changing the regulations to decrease the front yard from 40 meters to 30 meters, remove the restrictions on non-resident employees as well, and increase the shop floor and decrease the outdoor storage as well. So staff are recommending approval of the proposed rezoning, and site plan approval would be required. To give some context for the site, about over 1,000 meters depth, over 20 hectares lot area, and currently contains an existing farmhouse. There are just no existing buildings for the OFDU zoned area currently on site. So it was previously approved under bylaw 2018-116. Again, doesn't include any existing structures. You can see that in attachment 1 of staff's report. Comments are also shown on page 4 of staff's report. Township Public Works also indicated that it requires a paved commercial entrance, and Six Nations, the Grand River, also are requesting a stage 1 archaeology assessment, and to provide an archaeological assessment report for their review as well. And any archaeology that would proceed after the stage 1, they would require some Six Nations participation. And the archaeological assessment was not required when the original bylaw was passed for the OFDU on site. While the site contains a farmhouse and agricultural use, it is still within the Grand River headwaters, protected by First Nations treaty obligations. And since the A1425 zone is only being relocated, shown in attachment 2, there's a little detail there to show where that is. The stage 1 archaeological assessment can be implemented in the site plan agreement following. The relocated A1425 zoned area is to allow the reduced front yard as well for the proposed workshop, where the A1 zone requires 40 meters for agricultural buildings. They're looking to decrease to 30 meters. It will not impact any of the use or maintenance of the side road 73. They also have quite heavy landscaping along the front of the property as well. That provides a nice buffer. They're also proposing a skid steer room addition, a total OFDU floor area of 750 square meters maximum from their original 705 square meters. Any treeing or tree screening will be maintained. They have some outdoor storage. They're decreasing from 540 square meters to 500, which will be located east of the proposed workshop. And the proposed changes will not impact the principal agricultural use as well. So the new A1-425 regulations will ensure all proposed buildings will also be located outside the EP zone. and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Victoria. Are there any questions? Barb?
Thank you, and through you to Victoria. Victoria, thank you. I note that this still falls within the maximum size of an OFDU and they're compromising on their storage. I've never seen before, though, a restriction on front yard, like, what is the minimum front yard setback? And would that normally be a minor variance and have to come to the Committee of Adjustment? It caught my eye that we are reducing the required front yard from what it was that just a site plan control? Why are we doing that here and not at Committee of Adjustment?
Through you, it's best to encompass everything within the rezoning. It just makes sense when we're setting provisions for the OFDU, especially when it's an agricultural use building. In the A1 zone, it requires a 40-meter setback, so they're asking for 30 meters. They have an area where they need septic in front. They have some heavy landscaping as well, and it just makes sense, I think, for farm cluster efficiency as well, where they plan to have the new farmhouse, some of the barn buildings as well. They want to stay far away from the EP area as well, not to take any land further away from agricultural too. But that's an option if they were just building an agriculturally used building, they could go to Committee of Adjustment just to address the front yard setback, but that wouldn't make sense in the circumstance where they're addressing the zoned area for the OFDU, including all of the buildings. So then we can set certain provisions and clarify that within the new bylaw as well.
So if I understand, it doesn't have to go to Committee of Adjustment. We can deal with it through this process because they're coming for a revision to the zoning bylaw. Otherwise, if it had been starting out fresh, it might have required a minor variance.
Through you, that's correct. Yeah, if it was just the agriculture use building itself, not an OFDU, let's say it was just maybe I don't know, an example for a barn or something, and they had 30 meters proposed, and they would have to go through committee adjustment in that circumstance, but we can address it here.
I understand the farm cluster benefits. You want to keep everything contained within the square meter envelope, but thank you for answering my question. It doesn't have to go to Committee of Adjustment if it can be dealt with here. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Victoria. I'm going to propose that we recess now for lunch. It is 10 after 12. Why don't we reconvene at 12:45 or thereabouts? Okay. Okay. It is 12:45. We'll call the meeting back to order. The next report is just from the Finance Department regarding a tile drainage loan request. Someone care to move that, please? Monica, second by Jim. Thank you. Kayla, welcome.
Thank you. This report is to bring forward a tile drain loan request from the Broadridge. So I will take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from council? It's fairly straightforward. Not seeing any questions. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Well done, Kayla. Oh, we got another report here. Trust report regarding a 2023 trust fund financial statements as presented in the agenda. Someone care to move that, please? Joan, seconded by Jason. Kayla.
Thank you. Through you. This report is a wrap up of our 2023 audit. Sometimes these trust funds are included as part of our regular financial statements, but this year they were just separated out. So we are bringing them forward for approval.
Very good. Are there any questions from council? Okay, not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to legislative services from the clerk's department. We have a report here on accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act Provincial Desk Audit Findings. Barb will move, seconded by Monica. Madam Clerk. That's it.
Actually, our deputy clerk Holly's gonna take this one.
Sure. There she is. Oh, yeah. I was wondering where you went to. Sorry. Go ahead, Holly.
So this report is just to provide an update on council on the provincial desk audit findings that we brought, I believe, the beginning of June. We brought a report saying we were selected for an audit. So the province issued a compliance plan, basically just ensuring that we fix an accessible parking aisle in the Croton parking lot, which is kind of behind the pharmacy. That was completed on August 27th. And to add maintenance of accessible elements to our multi-year accessibility plan, which is included in attachment 1. It's included as appendix A. We're just looking for approval of that, and then we'll send everything to the province and we should be in compliance.
Operative word is should. Yeah. Any questions from council? Barb?
Just a quick question. I noticed this in another parking lot recently. Is the pathway that they're referring to where they hashtag a section so that people can't park butt up against the accessible parking spot and allows them a path through which they can travel?
That's correct. And there's a certain number of aisles required based on the size of the parking lot, how many spots there are. So I think the Proton one was just an oversight. So we've gotten it rectified since.
Yeah. Any other questions? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Holly. Moving on to the HR department, Human Resources. We have a report here regarding the CAO performance review policy. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, second by Monica. Kayla.
Thank you. This report is making changes to the CAO performance review policy and bringing those forward through, we would like it approved by bylaw. After a full year cycle of the previous CAO review policy and some feedback from staff, a third-party consultant, and council, we have made some changes. And I'll take questions.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. And through you, thanks, Kayla. And it does reflect our experience in using the previous report. I noted in the policy, the attachment, it lists the objectives, which we will work with the CAO. The council of the day works with the CAO to develop those objectives in November, and upon which that is what we would be evaluating come September the following year. Will those be populated, or will they be in a set, when council or the senior management team or whomever is part of the cycle get a form that has those objectives populated in it already? Or do we have to go and copy it into, I'm just thinking about being lazy.
So through you, once those are set in November during the mid-year check-in and the evaluations, we would copy them into that form just so everybody knew what the objectives were, and so that we're speaking to them in the same.
And,
Yep, go ahead.
and the only other thing I do appreciate, there's a section at the end for additional comments so that we can elaborate on other aspects of our observations as well. Yeah, there wasn't as well. It's okay.
Squirrel fell off the cage.
Squirrel,
Yep.
yeah.
Any other questions from council? Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, just a comment. Yeah, I like the new format. I like the last page there and the report number 2, that we can actually read these objectives where it's being written in, what, like the last one was just kind of hard to use. So this is really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And Barb has now retrieved the squirrel. The question is back.
I know. It's actually the option that you've incorporated, that we don't have to go to an outside consultant, that we can choose one of a variety of ways to execute the review and the tabulation of those. So I thought that was a really great way to incorporate our comments and to not mandate the use of an external costly consultant.
Yep, well done. Okay, not seeing any further questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Kayla. Is there any notice of motion? Nope. Consent agenda. Does anyone wish any of those items to be withdrawn and debated separately? Barb?
I'd like to pull 12.11, City of St. Catharines elect respect pledge.
Okay. Any other requests? Okay, so the motion will read, be it resolved that council receive the consent agenda dated September 3rd, 2025, save and accept item 12.11 for information. Someone care to move that, please? Joan and Monica? All those in favor? That is carried. So I will go to item 12.11, City of St. Catharines. Barb, if you'd like, we need a mover and seconder first. Do you want it? Barb will move, Joan will second. Sorry? Well, I know, but just you tell us what we're moving and seconding that.
So thank you, Mayor
Please.
Milne, and I would like to move that, I believe Holly has it up on the screen. I would like to move that we receive the correspondence and support the elect respect pledge that has been circulating from AMO with a couple of minor revisions just to change obviously the township name to the Township of Southgate, but incorporate the municipal employees in 2 places in this elect a pledge, because elect respect pledge, I think that it refers to municipal employees, but it doesn't include them in that conversation. And then I just proposing that we change the circulation to be more reflective of our local, our region here. And I so move.
Okay. Joan, you're okay seconding that? Yes, you are. Any questions or discussion about the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Barb. General announcements. Anybody have any news they'd like to share? Monica, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to wish everyone, as the school year begins, I'm sure everyone here will also wish everyone, students, educators, parents, school staff, an amazing back to school year. And also, there are many families that have been impacted by devastating floods in Punjab. and earthquakes in Afghanistan and many other navigating crises, including here at home in Canada. So just wanted to acknowledge that, and that these moments just remind us to have a shared humanity and the importance of compassion, resiliency, and community support.
Thank you, Monica. Anyone else? Barb?
Thank you. And on a more local aspect, I'd like to remind everyone that the Fall Fair, Dundalk Fall Fair, is this weekend. It opens Friday at, I believe, 7. I think the doors open around 6:30, but it'll kick off at about 8 o'clock and go all weekend. And they are introducing Saturday evening at dark, a drone light show as opposed to fireworks. So that will be a first ever, and looking forward to taking that in. So not only will there be great food, great entertainment, young children showing their calves, but a drone show to top it all off.
Cool. And the demo derby. Oh.
And the
really?
tractor pull.
Oh, it just goes on and on. Anybody else? Nope. Okay, well, thank you for that, or those two items. We'll come to the bylaws section. We have 3 bylaws there. Does anyone wish to remove any of those for further discussion? No? Okay. Be it resolved, the following bylaws dated September 3rd, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and sealed with the seal of the corporation, entered into the bylaw book. There's the drainage bylaw, the zoning bylaw amendment for Port Welding, and the CAO performance review policy. Someone care to move? Jim, thank you. Second. Jason? Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Confirming bylaw. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, seconded by Monica. Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. And we are to adjournment. Barb will move, we adjourn. Joan will second. All those in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.